They called her too ugly to even look at. The fancy stable literally laughed when she arrived. But 6 months later, when she walked into that arena, the same people who rejected her couldn't believe their eyes. This is her story. The morning they brought her in, even the kindest stable hands couldn't hide their reactions. She stood in the delivery trailer with her head hanging low, ribs visible through a patchy coat that looked like someone had taken scissors to it in the dark. Her mane was matted into dreadlocks, her tail barely existed, and one eye had a cloudiness that made people wonder if she could even see properly. The fancy stable's manager took one look and said what everyone was thinking. "We can't work with that." This wasn't just any facility turning her away. Crimson Oak Stables had produced championship horses, trained Olympic hopefuls, and charged $20,000 just for a consultation. Their gleaming barn featured climate-controlled stalls with automatic waterers, an indoor arena with professional lighting, and a waiting list longer than most celebrity restaurants. When wealthy clients drove up in their Range Rovers and Mercedes, they expected to see horses that looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine spread. They expected perfection. They expected beauty. She was none of those things. The rejection happened so fast it was almost clinical. No dramatic confrontation, no raised voices, just a polite but firm phone call to the rescue organization. "We appreciate you thinking of us, but this horse doesn't fit our program's requirements. We work with animals that have competitive potential. This one needs medical intervention. We're not equipped to provide translation." She was too ugly to damaged. Too much work for a facility that dealt in dream horses and fairy tale endings. What nobody knew was that Sarah Chen had been standing in the barn office when that call happened. She was there picking up her niece from riding lessons, but she'd heard every word. Sarah wasn't rich by Crimson Oak standards. She ran a small rehabilitation farm an hour outside the city, the kind of place where horses went when everywhere else had given up on them. Her facilities were basic. Her barn was old. Her fences needed paint. But something about that phone call made her blood boil in a way she hadn't felt in years. She called the rescue organization before she'd even reached her truck. That horse they just turned down. Where is she now? Within 3 hours, Sarah was standing in front of the saddest creature she'd seen in 15 years of rehabilitation work. The mare was a bay, or at least she had been once. Now she was a patchwork of missing hair, scars, and neglect. According to the intake papers, she was approximately 7 years old, possibly a thoroughbred mix, found abandoned on a property after the owner died. Neighbors said the horses had been alone for at least 3 months before anyone noticed. Most people would have seen a lost cause. Sarah saw something else entirely. The way the mare's ears pricked forward when Sarah spoke softly. The intelligence in those cloudy eyes. The fact that despite obvious starvation and neglect, this horse hadn't become aggressive or shut down completely. She was still trying, still hoping, still trusting that maybe, somewhere, someone would help. "I'll take her," Sarah said. The rescue coordinator actually looked relieved. The first night at Sarah's farm, the mare stood in her stall and didn't eat. Sarah had provided quality hay, fresh water, a mineral block, everything a hungry horse should want. But trauma does strange things to animals. Sometimes they forget they're allowed to be safe. Sarah sat on an overturned bucket outside the stall and just talked. About nothing. About everything. About her own failures and victories. About the weather. About the barn cat who thought he owned the place. Around midnight, she heard it. The soft sound of hay being pulled from the feeder. Sarah didn't move, didn't react, just kept talking in that same quiet voice. The mare ate slowly at first, then with increasing confidence. It was the first small victory in what would become an impossible transformation. The veterinary exam 3 days later revealed the full scope of the problem. Severe malnutrition, anemia, probable worm damage, skin infections, early signs of laminitis in her front hooves. and that cloudy eye was actually a healing corneal ulcer. The vet, Dr. Martinez, had worked with Sarah for years and had seen countless difficult cases. She looked at the mare, looked at Sarah, and said very carefully, "This is going to take months, maybe a year, and she may never be sound enough to ride." "That's okay," Sarah replied. "She doesn't owe me anything. She just needs to be okay." But Sarah had a secret weapon that fancy stables, with their expensive equipment and professional trainers, didn't have. She had time. She had patience. And she had an almost supernatural ability to see the potential in broken things. While Crimson Oak stables moved on to their next championship prospect without a second thought, Sarah began the painstaking work of rebuilding a horse from the inside out. The first month was all about basics: food, medicine, routine. The mare, whom Sarah had started calling Luna because of how she seemed to come alive in the evening hours, gained weight slowly. Her coat began growing back in patches. The cloudiness in her eye cleared completely, revealing a warm brown iris that seemed to hold entire galaxies. But it was the emotional transformation that happened first, before the physical one, that told Sarah everything she needed to know. Luna started nickering when Sarah approached, started following her around the paddock like a puppy, would rest her head on Sarah's shoulder and just breathe, as if she was downloading years of fear and replacing it with something that felt like hope. People who've never loved an animal don't understand this kind of bond. It's not ownership. It's not even really partnership. It's recognition. Two souls acknowledging each other's existence and deciding that maybe together they're stronger than they are apart. By month 2, Luna looked like a different horse. Her weight was nearly normal. Her coat had grown back thick and glossy. Her mane, with careful detangling and conditioning, fell in soft waves along her neck. But more importantly, her movement had changed. Sarah noticed it first when Luna was playing in the paddock with the other rescue horses. There was an elasticity to her stride, a lift in her shoulders, a way of carrying herself that seemed almost elegant. Sarah had been around horses long enough to recognize quality when she saw it, and she was starting to suspect that Luna wasn't just any abandoned thoroughbred mix. The shape of her head, the length of her legs, the way she moved, when she forgot to be afraid, these were the hallmarks of careful breeding. Someone somewhere had paid good money for this horse, and then they'd let her starve. Month 3 brought an unexpected visitor. James Park was a former Olympic coach who'd retired to the area and occasionally consulted for local barns he'd heard about Sarah's work through the veterinary grapevine and stopped by out of curiosity. He was watching Luna move in the round pen when he suddenly went very still. "Where did you get this horse?" His voice had an edge Sarah couldn't quite identify. She explained the rescue, the rejection from Crimson Oak, the rehabilitation process. James listened without interrupting, his eyes never leaving Luna. When Sarah finished, he said something that would change everything. "That's not a thoroughbred mix. That's a warm blood. Probably Dutch or Hanoverian breeding. And unless I'm completely losing my eye for movement, she's got Grand Prix potential written all over her." Sarah actually laughed. "James, she was half dead 6 months ago. She's a rescue horse with a difficult past. I'm just trying to get her healthy enough to live comfortably. Let me work with her," James said, "just for a week. Let me see what's really there." Sarah should have said no. Luna was finally feeling safe. The last thing she needed was pressure or expectations. But there was something in James's voice that made her pause. Not greed, not ambition, just pure professional curiosity mixed with something that looked like respect. 1 week, Sarah agreed. "And if she shows any stress, we stop immediately." What happened over the next 7 days became the stuff of local legend. James worked with Luna, using techniques most people had never seen: classical dressage, methods that focused on balance, rhythm, and willing partnership rather than force. He never raised his voice, never used spurs or a whip, just patient, consistent guidance that asked questions instead of giving commands. Luna responded like she'd been waiting her whole life for someone to speak her language. By day 3, she was executing lateral movements that horses took months to learn. By day 5, she was collecting her stride and engaging her hindquarters with the kind of power that made even Sarah's jaw drop. By day 7, James had her performing passage a highly collected, elevated trot that looked like floating with such natural grace that it seemed impossible this was the same starving, abandoned horse from 6 months ago. This horse, James said carefully, should be competing at the highest levels. She's got the mind, the movement, and the heart. All she needed was someone to believe in her long enough to let her show what she could do. Word spread fast in the equestrian community. Within 2 weeks, Sarah's phone was ringing constantly. Trainers wanted to buy Luna. Wealthy amateurs wanted to lease her. One caller offered $60,000 sight unseen just based on a video James had posted to his professional network. Everyone, it seemed, suddenly saw the value in the horse they'd previously dismissed. The most interesting call came from Crimson Oak Stables. The manager who'd rejected Luna 6 months ago wanted to schedule a visit. "We'd love to explore partnership opportunities," she said in that carefully neutral voice that wealthy people use when they realize they've made an expensive mistake. "Perhaps a training arrangement where we could showcase her abilities at our facility." Sarah let the silence stretch out uncomfortably long before responding. "That's very generous, but Luna has everything she needs right here. We could offer resources you can't match," the manager pressed. "Professional facilities, experienced staff, connections to major competitions. This horse could be worth hundreds of thousands if she's developed correctly." "She's not for sale," Sarah said flatly. "And she's not a commodity to be developed. She's a horse who survived abandonment and starvation and still found the courage to trust humans again. That's worth more than any show ring ribbon." But Sarah wasn't naive. She understood that Luna needed more than just safety and love. She needed purpose. Horses like Luna horses with that kind of athletic gift needed to move, to work, to use their bodies in ways that challenged them. Keeping her as just a pasture pet would be like asking an Olympic runner to never leave their couch. So Sarah made a different choice. She partnered with James to create a training program that prioritized Luna's emotional well-being alongside her physical development. They would compete, but only at shows where they could control the environment. They would train hard, but never push past Luna's comfort zone. And every single decision would be filtered through one question. Is this what Luna needs, or is this what humans want? Month 6 arrived with the kind of autumn morning that makes people believe in magic. The air was crisp, the leaves were turning, and Luna was scheduled for her first public appearance at a small regional dressage show. It wasn't a prestigious competition. No big names would be there. But for Luna, it represented something profound. Proof that surviving trauma doesn't mean you can't still thrive. Sarah loaded Luna into the trailer with the same careful attention she'd used for everything over the past 6 months. Luna loaded calmly, confidently, like she'd done it 1,000 times. At the show grounds, people stopped to stare. Not because Luna looked like a rescue horse those days were long gone, but because she looked like something from a classical painting. Her coat gleamed like polished mahogany. Her muscles rippled with controlled power. Her presence commanded attention without demanding it. "I want to change how we evaluate horses," the manager said. "I want to train my staff to see potential instead of just problems. And I think Luna's story could help other rejected horses find homes." 6 months can feel like a lifetime or a heartbeat depending on where you're standing. For Luna, it had been both. From abandoned and starving to healthy and competing. From rejected and wanted to sought after and admired. Her transformation was complete. But the real change wasn't physical. It was the unbreakable bond between a horse who chose to trust again and a human who chose to see value where everyone else saw nothing. Luna never did become a Grand Prix champion. She competed occasionally, always at small shows where the atmosphere was calm and supportive. But her true legacy was different. Crimson Oak Stables, shamed by their initial rejection, started a rehabilitation program for rescue horses. Dozens of animals who would have been euthanized or abandoned got second chances because one ugly horse proved that potential isn't always visible on the surface. And every time someone asked Sarah if she regretted not selling Luna for the substantial money she could have commanded, Sarah would walk out to the paddock where Luna grazed, peacefully alongside other rescues, and say the same thing. She doesn't owe me anything except the gift she already gave me, the reminder that sometimes the most beautiful things come wrapped in the most unlikely packages. Luna would lift her head at Sarah's approach, her eyes bright and clear and full of the kind of contentment that money can't buy. And in that moment, everyone understood that some victories have nothing to do with ribbons or prizes or proving anyone wrong. They have everything to do with proving yourself right to believe, right to hope, right to see possibilities where everyone else sees problems. Luna hadn't just transformed physically. She transformed everyone who took the time to really see her. And that's the kind of magic that changes the world, one rejected horse at a time.